we have such knowledge resources with us, the people we call as Aadharshilas. We very respectfully and gratefully call them as Aadharshilas, who are laying down the foundation for teachers' learning, teachers' development. So I invite and welcome Miss Deepa Bhushan, who is an Aadharshila for the 39th Aadharshila talk. Before I ask ma'am to take over, I would like to introduce her and give a brief of what the topic for today is about. But let me see if ma'am is here. Deepa ma'am, can you hear me?
Yes, very
Namaste, good
much.
afternoon.
Yes, good afternoon. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Welcome, and what a pleasure and privilege to have you here.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here today.
Very kind of you. So, dear friends, today's topic is very interesting. It's called brain friendly classrooms. You are going to learn through this session how can we plan and implement lessons for learning in the physical and virtual format using neuroscience to make learning for students engaging, meaningful, and long term. Ms. Deepa is the director of CP Goenka International Schools. Ma'am is an award-winning educationist with over 25 years of experience in education, driving success across diverse areas of impact like business administration, curriculum design, development, and implementation. She is the recipient of the National Award for Excellence in Education from Kanchi Peeth Shankaracharya ji. She has also been honored with the Innovation in Child Development Award at the Global Triumph Foundation World Summit and the Progressive Educationist Award by Evolve Excellence at Progressive Academic Excellence Conference and Cognizance, Maharashtra for her sincere efforts on quality in Indian education system. Ms. Deepa has been a speaker for several prestigious global educator forums in India and abroad. Friends, we had to keep it concise. Otherwise, there is a lot that can be said about Ms. Deepa. I am sure when you listen to her, you would be able to understand the depth of the wisdom that she possesses. But as a friend, what I know, not just as a friend, but as somebody who has always looked up to her as a senior in education, as a guide. She is a wonderful human being who is very modest, very humble, always encouraging, a great motivator, and is the best learner. I have always seen her talking of new things, very creative, very innovative, thinking of the teachers that she so lovingly and passionately trains and goes down to students as well and to the parents. So it's a great pleasure to have an educationist and Aadharshila like Ms. Deepa Bhushan here with us today. Friends, brain and its connection with learning is not something which we are not aware of, but the concept of brain friendly classrooms is something that is not talked about, and it must be talked about. It's an important idea, especially very crucial in India at this particular time when we talk of making learning enjoyable and more meaningful and permanent. So this idea isn't frequent, and we are taking this step ahead through Ms. Deepa to introduce all of us to this crucial topic of making our classes brain friendly. So let's start with Ms. Deepa. It's important that we use the strategies in our classrooms that reflect what we know about the brain and learning. So looking forward to learning more about Ms. Deepa.
I think, ma'am, you were lost for a while. So,
Am
yeah,
I
please
audible
continue. Yes,
now?
ma'am. Yes, yes. So we missed the last 15 seconds of what you spoke.
Sir, you are on mute.
I'm sorry, it seems I lost my connection. I've logged in from other device. So I hope you all could see ma'am's introduction, and I wouldn't stretch any further because we all are eager to listen to Ms. Deepa ji. So ma'am, it's over to you now. We all are excited to learn how to make our classes brain friendly. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you so much, Jaya, for your kind words. I always believe, what you see in others is who you are. And I think I have learned a lot from you and taken back a lot from you always. So thank you
Thank
very
you.
much for your kind words. Thank you. I'll start sharing my screen right now. So this is a first where I have got a very text-heavy presentation for everybody. I understand in times of technology, sometimes, you can't hear or, you've missed out on certain things. So I have put a lot of the pointers that I'm going to be talking about on screen. And, y'all could click pictures or take them back as a checklist. I'm sure there's a lot that y'all are all currently doing. And yeah, so I'll just start first with my presentation. And thank you so much to everyone for being here today. I hope you are able to take back something at least of meaning with you today. All right, is my presentation visible to everyone?
Yes, Deepa ma'am.
Yes,
Yes, ma'am.
All right. So in today's time, we've all learned a lot, and we've all moved on to the virtual space. And there's a lot that we're doing. But sometimes, of course, right now, I think with the end of the year coming in close, with us needing to close down, say by the month of April, I see sometimes a little bit of initiative fatigue coming in into teachers. They've done so much throughout the last few months. There's so much new learning that has happened. And, right now I see that, okay, the dip is coming through, which happens in any space where the motivation levels slightly come down. And you're wondering, how am I doing the right thing? Is it enough? Because like currently, like when I can't see my students on screen, I find it very challenging. And I say hats off to you, because you all have been doing this for a year, where children switch off their videos. Sometimes you're unable to see them. They are in different spaces. How do you connect with them? When all that is happening, how do you make sense of what you're doing, and how do you understand that, yes, you are on the right path, the right trajectory, and the children are taking in the learning that you want to give them? So I am going to talk to you today about brain-friendly learning. I'm sure there's a lot that you're doing within this, but you could use this as a checklist to say, okay, if I've missed out on certain things, maybe I need to include it. And even though I may not be able to see the results out there, this is something that is happening, and I know that the learning is taking place, even if I can't see it reflected immediately. So this should help you to do that. So let's understand what is a brain-friendly classroom. So in the 1990s, there was a lot of research that came through on how our brain works. And of course, when you understand how your brain works, you're understanding how you can utilize that space for education. How does the mind learn? If we can understand all those aspects, we're able to work with children better, or learners of any age, whether you see the preschoolers, the primary grades, the secondary grades, or the higher school children, or even adults. When we understand how the brain works, those are elements that we can take in and work with. What are we looking for when we want a brain-friendly classroom? Is increasing student achievement and fostering high self-esteem. These are two elements we know that will lead children to lead successful lives in later years. Of course, adding the elements of the value system, the base system, everything comes within this space, but you'll be surprised how the brain principles really work towards ensuring learning happens in the right manner. Yeah. So the brain-friendly classroom is very simple. It just takes aspects of how the brain functions and how the mind learns. And if you can utilize them, you've got high student achievement and you've got high self-esteem happening right there. So how do you go about creating a brain-friendly classroom? And this is something, so everybody says, it sounds so easy, and I can understand because all of you have done so much new in this year, and still now there's something new that has come up, or this is something that we know and we're already doing. Could be a thought you would have after this session, but it gives you a feeling, a sense of achievement that yes, you are on that right path. So when you look at the brain-friendly classroom, we're going to use the four-corner framework, which actually makes it very easy for us to structure what we're doing and how we are going about doing it. There are 12 principles of brain learning which are there, which were based on a research by Kane and Kane. And these were then structured under this four-corner framework, which is very simple. One becomes setting the climate for thinking. The second, teaching the skills of thinking. Third, structuring the interaction with thinking. And fourth is thinking about thinking. So if you see, it's very simple. It's for thinking, of thinking, with thinking, and about thinking. It's as simple as that, really. And when you are creating your lesson plans, if you keep these elements in your mind, it becomes very easy for you to structure a lesson which leads you to a brain-friendly classroom. And it's really very easy to do the same. I would say that today you would be doing 70 to 80% of all these elements, and now you can just tick mark and put it down for yourself that yes, this is all that I'm doing. Yeah. So we're going to start off first with setting the climate for thinking, where learners can explore, investigate, inquire. If we were in a regular classroom, I would have asked all of you, what does it mean to set the climate for thinking, right? And I'm sure all of you would have had answers for me from what you all have experienced. I'm sure you would see that, safe climate of the classroom. When I say safe, the physically safe. Yeah? Luckily, most of us are working in schools where you have great classrooms. You're not worried whether the roof will fall off the classroom. You've got air-conditioned classrooms too sometimes. You've got fresh light. You've got, fresh air coming into your classrooms. So the basics are in place, but there are so many spaces where that doesn't happen. Also, being emotionally safe. How important is it for the classes to be emotionally safe? All these elements actually set the climate for thinking. And so the first principle that I'm going to talk to you about is learning is enhanced by challenge and inhibited by threat. I'm sure all of you will agree with me on this aspect, that even as youngsters, when we were in the classroom, if we felt for any reason that the teacher was going to shout at us, or if we made a mistake, normally what happens is people don't answer a question. Like if you're asked any question, a lot of us hesitate to answer because what if I'm wrong, right? This says I don't feel emotionally or mentally safe enough to come forward and state my answer, right? So all this is happening because we are scared. We see a threat to ourselves, to our self-esteem. What if people laugh at me? What if I've made a mistake? What if I say something wrong? All together, really, don't let us reach our optimum, right? So a safe and enriched environment fosters a state of relaxed alertness. I always talk about this, state of relaxed alertness. I've also spoken about, in my TED talk about this, that you need to be alert, but you also need to be relaxed. Learning happens only in a space of relaxed alertness. If you are hyper or you're stressed out all the time, do you think learning will go into you? No. If you're preoccupied with other things, your learning is not going to do. But if you're enjoying the session, you are alert, you are taking in things, and you are relaxed, you would learn better. So it's extremely important for learners to be in a state of relaxed alertness. The mind becomes engaged in problem solving and decision making effectively only when the learner understands to learn is to make mistakes also and to experience success also. So we learn from our mistakes. If you make a mistake and you give up, you're not going to keep trying it and learn. And you are going to experience success after that. But sometimes children nowadays, and I also see that in the young adults, is if they don't experience success in the first time, they take it as stress, they take it as they can't do a thing, and they give up. So when we're talking about the 21st century life skills, and I'm going to combine brain research and 21st century life skills for you, when we talk about persistence, resilience, all these elements come from the fact that learners have to understand that it's okay to make mistakes. It's all right. And it's only when you make mistakes, you have to find the learning from that and take that forward, as that's when you build resilience and persistence. Tomorrow, if children are looking at becoming entrepreneurs, how will they do that? You're never going to get everything right. Yeah. I mean, I think more than anything, the pandemic has shown us that you're never going to get everything right. So how do we ensure that we have everything in the right manner and we are able to deal with mistakes? We are able to deal with faults and go forward. I think is ensuring students understand it's okay to make mistakes plus experience success. Now, how as teachers would we really do this in the classroom? you know it's important to discuss open-ended scenarios, problem scenarios. Like, give them a scenario which has no right or wrong answers. There's no black or white. It could be a gray, and children have to put forward their perspective. You'll see that a lot in Cambridge questions, case studies. Like, it's about putting your perspective forward, and if you can give the rationale for your thought, there may not be a right or a wrong answer. So it's about putting your perspective ahead that matters. Also, you can enhance, learn, challenge. You can inhibit threat by creating a safe and caring space for all types of learners. That means your mental, physical, and emotional space is looked after. There is enough motivation given to children. But here also something that I'd like to share with you is uh, false motivation is not good for children. And that doesn't work at all. So this has to be an authentic space that is safe and a caring place that is created for all types of learners. Also, normally you'll see that in lab settings, children are doing an experiment. We'd like to tell them everything in place, but I think children should be given materials, and then teachers can guide the process. So the teacher as a facilitator is an important role that comes in here, and let children do their own learning. Let them figure out responses for themselves. I think this brings in learning from mistakes plus experiencing success for them. And this is the first principle that we're talking about. Emotions are critical to patterning. I'm sure, all of you would know that when we were young as teachers, who we liked as a teacher was the person who would teach a favorite subject. And my favorite subject was really dependent on the teacher. Because I liked my teacher, I said, I am happy to be in her class and I'm open to learning. So emotional hooks are very necessary for long-term learning. And negative emotions, if I don't like a subject, or I've not had any achievement in it, or I don't like the teacher because she's shouted at me or been mean to me or has not paid attention to me, these negative emotions can also become blocks to learning. Emotions and cognition cannot be separated. I think that's a very important aspect for us to remember. So today, teachers' role, when they talk about the teacher's role expanding, really to no longer being about being a teacher of academic content, really. It's about building relationships with children, creating emotional hooks with them and taking them forward. So positive emotional hooks, which can be used within a classroom scenario, like role plays. Sometimes when you walk into a class, you do a surprise introductory activity with children, and the children feel really happy. Oh, our teacher did something fun for us today. Give children a voice. So sometimes when you have these public opinion polls, and tell children that, okay, you tell what you want and how would you like it, you'll see children come forward. Also, really touching emotions comes from a place of telling children relevant stories, something that they can connect to, that they can feel in sync with. or something that touches their emotional space, and then connect learning to that, will also help in bringing in long-term learning. So often we would remember, any concept which was done in a story format with us more than just regular teaching that was happening with us, or any activities that were done. That made more sense to us rather than just regular teaching, because I was happy at the time the activity was conducted. Competition is also something, competition and reward, but in the right way. And this, when I while I was putting competition and reward here, I actually thought around, you know, I'd say for 2 to 3 times whether I should put it or not, because this is a fine-edged sword that we walk on. Competition and reward in the right way releases dopamine in our brain. It's the same thing that happens when, during gamification, like while playing games, which is why we feel happy and we continue to play games. If it moves in an incorrect direction or there's too much of it, then it leads to stress, and other negative characteristics are there for the same. So, but if used rightly, competition and reward bring in a feel-good feeling for students, and they want to really take in more from that. Humor. There's nothing like humor, right? Which brings in fun. If I could see all of you today, right now, I'd want a big smile from all of you, or the ha ha ha. Have any of you ever tried laughter therapy in class? I don't know, but you must do that, even if you're in the virtual space. So when I'm talking about the learning that's happening, even in the virtual space, don't forget to do things that you did in the physical space. So if you're going to look at this picture, when you're seeing somebody laughing, what happens to you? You feel happy. That's laughter. So laughter and humor both bring in positive emotions for us, and we want to learn. I just want all of you to look at this picture very carefully. Look at the surroundings in the picture. So you've got the names, days of the week, the alphabets, there's a storybook, and these children are laughing. But there's this one little child here who's unhappy. Do you think the child is taking in learning as much as the other children are taking in if we are talking about emotions? We see that happen in our classrooms too, where children who are very unhappy for whatever reasons, even it could be something in the household, are unable to take in enough of the long-term learning that comes in. But children who are in a state of relaxed, alert, are going through happy emotions, are able to learn much better, and are more open to learning in the open space. Now, learning involves focused attention and
Miss Deepa,
peripheral. Yes.
Deepa, if I could just
Yeah.
chip
Yes.
in here, I
Yes.
think what you have said makes so much of sense. I loved the term that you have used, emotional hooks here. It's important for teachers to understand it's no longer about your academic or subject expertise or your intelligence quotient. A lot depends on the socio-emotional intelligence which a teacher needs in order to have that positive culture, the thinking classroom, and the brain-friendly classrooms.
True.
Am I right,
True.
Deepa ma'am?
True. Very true, Jaya. Very true. And I think that's when learning, actually, we talk about superior classrooms really. And, the superior classroom is one. And if we go, once we go through all the brain friendly principles, you will see that the superior classroom is one that takes into account all these aspects. So might look like a normal classroom, does not need any fancy bits, but really when the social emotional aspects of children are also looked into, and not only the academic content, that's where the difference in that classroom comes in. Very true, Jaya. Very true. So learning involves focused attention and peripheral perception. Yeah, so our brain does not respond only to what it's seeing in that context, It responds to the entire sensory context that is around us. So even the kind of chairs that we sit on, the temperature of the room, whatever is around us, So your peripheral information that the students are getting may not involve focused attention, but it's there, and that's something that children are taking in from the subconscious. So when we have informative bulletin boards, instructional graphics on the board, appropriate background music, the right kind of lighting, you have posters, charts, maps, and time to engage in the environment, also is given to the children. All these aspects are actually certain things that add on to the focused attention of the children. So if you will observe the slide that I'm showing you currently, you will see on the right hand corner, there are these two icons, right? I have placed these icons because, of course, this time, like I told you, I put a lot of text on my slide so that, if you miss out on anything, at least you can read and take back with you, or you want to click snapshots as a checklist. What you can do is, I wanted to put a lot more images, so I couldn't do that. So I said, okay, let me put icons that reflect what the statement is talking about. And that's something that I've put in all. Now, this is what is there at your peripheral perception. And because now, and I know that I've brought it to your attention, so maybe you'll focus on all these on the other slides. So I'm going to quickly take you through what was on emotions are critical to patterning, as well as learning is enhanced by challenge and inhibited by threat. So you are seeing that these are there on the periphery, but I have brought it to your attention. Now you will engage with it in the environment. And I'm going to give you time to do that because I brought it to your attention. Also, the attitude of the teacher, the role modeling by the teacher. So often our verbal and our non-verbal cues really, kind of take away or add on to where the learning comes from. Now, as a teacher, if I walk into classroom, I'm dull, I'm looking low, my voice is sad, and I'm like, hello, good morning, children, please sit down. I do that. Or I come into class alert, happy, I'm so happy to see your children. Now remove your books out and let's be ready. Put all the other things in. We're going to do this today, and this is how. Are you seeing the difference between both of the classes? And you will see that the energy of the children either goes up or goes down with these spaces. When you walk in fresh into a classroom, and even if it is the virtual classroom, and more so in the virtual classroom, because sometimes, the children can't see you for whatever reasons, or, you're not around, in a sense of your voice actually carries forward your role modeling or what you're feeling, and then the same thing to some extent is passed on to the children. So role modeling by the teacher is extremely important. Another thing to do, engage in the environment, and I get this question a lot, how do we ensure, because we don't have now, how do we show children informative bulletin boards, instructional graphics, but a lot of the teachers have been using always, and I see that, which is why we use either PPTs or videos. We bring in visual text that then get children to do their own mind maps. That's another thing that you can bring in and ask them to put it around themselves in their room. So if we can't get those informative bulletin boards for them, you can do activities with children where they can put in all these elements into their rooms and bring in that, their peripheral information for them, so that they can see for themselves and learn for themselves. And this is a very important part of learning, which is why we have all this in schools. Yeah. So if you're looking at setting the climate for thinking, you're looking at room arrangement and classroom guidelines, you're looking at blocks of time, sensory inputs, you're going to probe for in-depth answers, so have your Socratic dialogue, wait time. I'd like to speak about wait time here because that's a must. I know that sometimes in the virtual space, we always ask children to mute themselves, right? Sorry. We're always asking them to mute themselves. And therefore, when we say a question, and I know we have limited time online, when we give them a question, we don't wait for them to respond. Sometimes we just give it off because, of course, we also have to do classroom management. But it's important if you can get into breakout rooms, have children in smaller groups, give them thinking activities, and then give them wait time. Be patient. Let them find the answers for themselves. That, and give them the space to do that. That is also setting the climate for thinking, because you're not in the hurry to give them the right answers. And I also spoke about open-ended questions earlier. Yeah, provide the right kind of equipment and supplies. Well, right now the equipment and supplies are online. They have their laptops or their phones through which they are studying. But also when you're doing activities, you can ask children to bring in things from home, whatever's in their house, and work along with those activities with them. So say you are teaching them about shifting plates in geography. Yeah. So you could actually have them put sets of books together and try and work it out. So it's important that you don't restrict yourself for equipment and supplies to thinking only if I was in school, I would have been able to do that. But what can I do at home also with them? Yeah, student groupings, when you do your breakout rooms or when you're giving them project or research work, it's important to have different level of achievers in the groups for each one to learn from the other. Language stimulation, ask high level questions. The what questions are the easiest to answer, but move into the higher level questions. And of course, like I spoke to you about the verbal and the non-verbal cues. These are all elements that help with the setting of the climate for thinking. Yeah. The next aspect that we're looking at is teaching the skills of thinking. And Jaya, would I ask you to just give me a time key whenever you are, whenever I'm crossing my time?
Not at all. You are very well in time. We still have, I mean, you can easily carry on for next 25 minutes. It's
All
4
right.
now. So
Okay.
around 4:25, we can check if there are questions participants have put for you. What I would like you to know is that the audience is completely in sync and in agreement with what you're saying. They are all sharing the similar thoughts.
Great,
I just
great.
wanted you to know that you have the audience on the same page.
Thank you. Thank you for that. I'm glad. I'm really glad.
And it's great going.
Thank you.
We are enjoying.
So, teaching the skills of thinking is our second block that we have. So, the brain processes heart and whole simultaneously. I'm sure you've learned about this all in your B.Ed when you have done, or your ECC Ed. I'm sure you've all learned about this. But how do we bring it into our classroom? And so the brain can reduce information into parts and also at the same time perceive it and work with it as a whole. That's the beauty of our brain that we can do. And that really is with humans. They've tried it with, animals too, some of the animals, and they haven't had positive responses as yet. But yes, humans can do that. So important for us, therefore, to always have children look at a big picture. Why are we learning something? What is the reason behind learning something? And what is the big picture that we get out of this is an aspect that must be a part of all your lesson planning and something that you are talking to the children also about. I don't know if any parents or children are on this platform today, but this is something that even children in the higher grades especially can do for themselves as to why am I learning something? What is coming through this for me? So in fact, when kids make mind maps, they get the big picture. Okay, this is what this is. So this is the whole story that I'm learning, or this is the whole concept that I'm learning, and this makes sense to me. So the parts combine to form a whole there then for a child, rather than understanding it in bits and pieces. Learning theory and then applying it to practical scenarios. That's something. So you're learning it in part, but then when you apply it, and that's when you understand the whole. When you do an application for any concept is when you understand the whole space that's happening out there. Of course, inductive and deductive reasoning, an essential aspect of the brain processing the part and the whole simultaneously, and breaking down problems into smaller parts. I see this, I used to always say this, when children are doing math and they're doing word problems, they find that the biggest, where they make mistakes, they are unable to comprehend. And so I teach children this thing. First of all, I would never call them word problems. I'd always call them number stories. The moment you say the word problem, it's a problem for me. And I find it very difficult. And I'm lost there only. So emotions are critical to patterning. So I change it and I call them number stories. Now, if it's a story, I have to make sense of the story. So it would be like a mystery for me. And I have to be like the detective who has to find the solution in the end, or the mystery in the end. And if you do that with children, it really helps. So try doing that, and also get them to break down the problems into smaller parts and ask questions of each smaller part, right? So like say you're doing a word problem and you want to say that, what is, say, Jack had 3 balloons, Jill had 2 balloons, right? And so how many balloons were there in total? So you're breaking up this thing. So so how many balloons did Jack have? How many balloons did Jill have? And what is the question asking you to do? They're finding total. So what does total mean? Add up. right? And that's the sum. So it's as simple as that. So you're breaking up that whole big problem into bits and bits and pieces, and then weaving it together to understand what the problem is asking you to do. So rather than call it a problem, the next time you want to do it, please call it a story, and that's how you can go ahead. So yes, the brain processes part and the whole simultaneously. I'm going to bring your attention back to the icons. Please have a look at it, and I hope you take that back as peripheral information. Yeah. The next aspect is the brain has spatial memory systems and a set of systems for rote learning. Yeah. So we have two memory approaches: to retain facts, skills, procedures, or to make sense of experiences. And these both work together. So the thing that happened when Bloom's taxonomy came in, yeah, we all took remembering as the lowest aspect, and everyone said it's not a good thing. Like, you know, if you're looking at only remembering, it's not good. Yes, if you're looking at only remembering the what questions, that's not a great space to be in. But memory is an essential aspect of our learning. We always reach out into our short-term memory for certain aspects and our long-term memory for certain aspects. And we have to take that into account when learning takes place. That's why, if you'll see, remembering is at the bottom of the Bloom's taxonomy, and it's the largest. It forms the base. Then you have understanding, and then you move forward to creating being on the top. So we have to have all aspects. Please do not negate learning or memory in any manner. And we actually, as individuals, as humans, have a set of systems for rote learning, as well as we have spatial memory systems. So what happens is, when we have to create rote learning, it's also called associate. We could do it as associative learning, right? So it's there's this interesting thing that says that cells that fire together wire together. I'm not going to go deep into brain learning right now, otherwise it would really take us a full day. But as we know that, you know, synapses are formed within our neurons when we learn, and there are connections made. Now, when these connections are made, that's when learning happens, and when we are associating things together, that's the cells that fire together wire together. So going over the same information or sets of ideas at spaced intervals can create strong firing patterns in the brain and allow things, aspects to be saved into the student's long-term memory. You know, so there are so many things that
Ms. Deepa,
yes, yes,
Ms. Deepa, I would like to add my two bits here.
yes, yeah,
You know, I think in today's time, schools and all of us as educators have in some way demonized memorization. But this being one of the important functions of brain, I think it's important to understand that memory plays a big role in whatever learning we acquire with time. It becomes much easier to stack on one over the other when you have the base of a good memory.
good
So
memory.
we should not, like you said, we should not negate the importance of memory, like you said, the fire together, wire together thing. So I would just like to bust this myth, because students are here, parents are here, we all are here.
Yeah,
We have to understand that memory need not be considered as a devil.
very good.
Obviously, what's needed is how to use that information, how to use that memory to further enhance your understanding and learning. But memory is important. So memorizing certain things for certain occasions is not wrong.
True. And it's needed actually.
Yes,
So,
it is needed.
you know, in fact, so often when we have to, and that there comes in the other bit, that we not only must consume information, but create meaning, value, and action out of that information. When we have to do that, we have to reach within our memory only to the earlier learnings that we've had. Our previous learning is something that's gone into our memory systems. Some of the techniques that we can use for learning is, of course, to understand and then learn adds on to the learning, you know. But if you are just not going to understand, it does move into your short-term memory. There's no doubt about it. So there is this rule of three that I have put in my list. Is the rule of three is that when you repeat or anything thrice, like you study it thrice, it normally moves into your long-term memory. This has been proved by research. I've read up a little bit of research on this, and this has been proved by research. So this is something to take back. At least do any kind of learning that you do minimum thrice, and it will move into your long-term memory. So it's called the rule of three, and that's something that you can take back. Of course, Multiplication tables. I know that even if today I am saying, I have to multiply something, I actually go through the whole table in my mind and I'm singing it. I'm sure most of you are doing that, like, because that's something that we did. It was rhythmic learning for us. We actually, two twos are two, two fours are eight, two threes are six, whatever we did, it still goes on in our head, and that's how you learn. So these are things that get embedded into your brain so much. So repeated rehearsals, using acronyms. Acronyms are a part of associative learning. Using flashcards because you're having the visual element with what you need to remember. All these bits help us. And of course, then the second aspect, which is to create meaning, value, and action out of all that we have within our memory and all the new information that we're taking in. You must have elements where children have to write an essay or projects, are able to do projects. They can work with interactive simulations. So all these aspects help to create meaning, value, and action. But our brain has a combination of both, and both are a must. And which is why really the Bloom's taxonomy, includes all these elements within that space when it talks about application, analysis, and so on and so forth. So when you're teaching the skills of thinking, you are looking at promoting collaboration, team building, leadership skills, conflict resolution, communication, applying problem solving and decision making skills, fostering critical and creative thinking. And it's essential to develop academic content, skills, and concepts. Please do not forget that. So often when, like, just for memory, when we're looking at the higher level skills, or we're only talking about skills, we forget that the content forms and concepts form the base of these skills. So extremely important to do that. Incorporate research and performance tasks, incorporate technology, which I think we've done a lot right now, to teach the skills of thinking. Identify peak performance. Now, this is something which is essential for children to understand also, and also teachers to understand that what are the elements, or what are the elements of the brain or the child's thinking which bring in peak performance for a child. We never really think about this, and this really is a session in itself. So I've just put this here. If anybody's interested, please read up on it. But identifying peak performance of a child is extremely important when we're teaching them the skills of thinking. And of course, developing production and application skills. All these elements lead to the teaching of the skills of thinking. So we come to the third element, which is structuring the interaction with thinking. I'm going to go a little bit fast right now, because you'll see that a lot of aspects that are there are elements that are throughout the whole space. But we also know that the brain is a parallel processor. That means thoughts, emotions, and imagination operate simultaneously. It's not one thing at a time. It's not that my brain is doing only one thing at a time. So optimal learning results from orchestrating the learning experience to address multiple operations in the brain. Yeah. And for this, we have a lot of multimodal learning that happens. We're catering to our, like, I remember when I used to be teaching about, the solar system, rotation and revolution. Now, that's a concept that children always make a mistake in. What is rotation? What is revolution? So then we'd say, okay, you're showing them the visual, which is you're showing them a video of the same, where they're listening also. The teacher's talking to them, explaining them. Then you're also looking at the kinesthetic aspect, where we just draw, the orbit on the floor, and we'd ask the children to rotate. So when they were kinesthetically doing it would be embedded in them, and none of them would ever forget what rotation was. Then we'd make them walk around the orbit, and that would be revolution. Now that's something, and that's a concept that children never, ever forgot. Very clear in their heads on what was rotation, what was revolution. So multimodal learning is extremely important if children are, to have optimal learning experiences. And because our brain is a parallel processor, that means a lot of our elements are actually within our brain working together. It's like when we're seeing something visually, yeah, our brain, we may think we're just seeing it, but while we see the image, it goes connected to our brain. Our brain is assessing it for shape, the light, size, color, all these elements all together are actually continuously happening in a play. So complex. One is multimodal learning as well as complex performance tasks, such as producing a play or creating a brochure, or even service-oriented learning. Where children go to do service. There are so many multitasking things that they do within that space. All these help and bring in optimal learning. Also, when we describe something in detail, rather than give children just a general concept, it's good to actually explain in detail or describe in detail, make it very visual or auditory, all about their senses. So normally in English especially, when they have all these adjectives describing, you're able to visualize a picture, right? Completely. All these elements actually bring in optimal learning and are actually aspects of multimodal learning. Each brain is unique. That is something that we know. So just like our fingerprints, even our brain is a unique space. And so we all may have a similar, we all have our cerebrum and all the medulla and all, but it is integrated differently in each brain. And when I say that, it's not actually that, the parts have shifted, it's just the elements, the way the synapses join, the neurons, all these aspects are integrated differently in each brain, and individual experiences and life circumstances influence the anatomy of the brain. So therefore, it is important for us to understand this aspect. We talk about individual learners, so it's important for us to give individual assignments. Differentiated learning should not be something that we do once in a while. It should become a norm. It should be a part of your classroom, and I know this is not easy. It's just not easy. But I just feel that if we start moving in that direction, someday we'll reach. It's like technology. We never thought we could teach with technology in the manner that we're doing today, but it just happened for us. And we are seeing the difference, the impact. Otherwise, it was only about a PPT that we had earlier, but now there's so much more that we're doing. The same way, differentiated learning needs to happen. Then, catering to multiple intelligences. I'm sure all of you know about the multiple intelligences. And of course, freedom of choice to present knowledge or skills. So normally when we have an assessment, we always ask children to write in a particular manner. But when you do a project, you can give them different forms in which they can present. If somebody is good at speaking, they can explain the concept. If somebody is good at putting in a PPT, they can explain it in that way. If someone's good at doing posters, they can explain in that way. And those are the elements that you can look at when you are taking into account that each brain is unique. Learning engages the entire physiology.
Deepa ma'am,
Yes.
may I request you to stop your presentation and represent again, because somebody caused a problem and now we are not able to see your screen.
Okay, I have done a stop share. So should I start sharing again?
Yes, yes ma'am.
Is my screen visible?
Yes.
Yes.
All right. Okay. So learning engages the entire physiology. Yeah. And so it's very important for us to remind students to take care of their health also. So it's the complete body that is an aspect. It's not only the brain, and the brain is impacted by whatever's happening in the rest of the body. So reminding students to drink water on regular intervals is a part of the learning and teaching process, really. We never think of it as an aspect, right? It's just when a child asks us that, Miss, may I drink water, that we may say yes or a no. But it's important for us to tell children to drink water regularly because it hydrates the brain. Encouraging children to have a balanced diet plan is a must because all these elements are a part of your physiology. Yeah? Keeping your brain healthy, and that, how does it come in? Through solving brain energizers. I don't know how many of you all do Sudoku or the crosswords or things like that, or even mental math. Playing those games that we used to do when we were younger in class, and sometimes I think these are certain practices also that you can have. You used to have that big word and you would form small words and you had to do it within the time slot. All these are brain energizers, and today there are so many brain energizers available online. It's always good to take that 5 minutes in class because it also is fun for children, but it's always good to do a little bit of that because it keeps your brain healthy. Another thing is that rest and relaxation is a must for children. If a child is staying up late in the night, watching TV or programs. But naturally, when the child is tired, the child is not going to be able to take in learning. So learning engages the entire physiology, and it's an aspect that needs to be taken care of. Incorporating frequent movement in the class. So what I'd like everyone to do now, because you've been with me now for 40 minutes, I'd like all of you now to clap your hands. I may not be able to hear you, but I'd like all of you to clap your hands, shake your hands higher, move yourself a little bit, tap your feet. It just takes a minute, but just imagine if you did this in your class, it just gets children back into the learning process in 2 minutes. Because when the mind wanders, yeah, frequent brings it back, and it's an important part of your class. So important for this to be done. I hope all of you have clapped your hands, tapped your feet, and even you can do finger play games also with children. Yeah? So important to build opportunities for downtime to foster reflection. Now, what happens is normally we just go on and on and on and on teaching. Just give children some time to ponder over and think about what they've learned, and then maybe communicate back to you. This is an important aspect of the learning physiology. And of course, teaching students to manage their emotions and stress. So a teacher today is not only teaching academic content, but academic content is important. You are also taking into account all these aspects, and you must have this as a part of your session. The brain, of course, is a social brain. So having mixed grouping of students, opportunities for acceptance, opportunities for social interaction are a must. You can see the joy when they have their friends with them, like we all do as adults also. So the brain is a social brain. So as you can see, structuring the interaction with thinking is about creating personal relevance, targeting multiple intelligences, designing integrated curricula, developing thematic units, using case studies, problem-based learning, cooperative learning, and of course, creating performance tasks. And we come to our final box, which is thinking about thinking. So the search for meaning is innate. And as human beings, we will always look for meaning in everything that is there. That's an inherent part of our DNA or our brain is what you would say it as. So classrooms need stability and routine as well as novel and challenge. And children learn through mediation and reflection because you need to give them time to do this, because they need to see patterns, themes, and the big idea concepts, because they have to make meaning of their learning. It's like once you finish my session today, I'd like you to go back. I'd like you to think about what you took back. Is it making sense to you? And that's something you would do even if I wouldn't have told you about this. So this is an aspect which is very much there. Also, to chunk or rearrange information in a meaningful way is something that we need to encourage our students to do. That is why where the graphic organizers and mind maps come in, and we ask children to put the information that it makes sense to them, oneself. We used to have the habit of making our own notes. So even if somebody is telling me something, I'll make my own notes because I'm making sense of the information that is coming my way in my own way. Another thing is connecting new learning to past learning or future applications is extremely important. And of course, introducing innovations in teaching. Only then can we also reach out to children, because their world is very different from our world, and their search for meaning is innate in their world. So if we have to move into their world to help them to find the search for meaning, we have to include a lot of innovations, and we have to understand their space. And essentially important is the time for self-reflection. The search for meaning also occurs through patterning, and I'm going to bring you back to the icons. I hope you are looking at them. Yeah, so the brain has a natural capacity to integrate vast amounts of seemingly unrelated information. When teaching involves integrated, thematic, reflective approaches, learning is more brain compatible and learning is enhanced. That's something that you're going to see. So which is why we always talk about themes and we talk about integrating learning. And that's what makes sense to children, really. So And to ensure that patterns, children are able to find meaning through patterns, you must ensure children are active and speak in their classrooms, and like I said, at this point of time in the virtual space, the mute all option is not something. So do create opportunities for group discussions, assessment of work through peer evaluation, self-evaluation, and feedback. I think self-evaluation and self-reflection are two great aspects necessary for the search of meaning that occurs through patterning, because unless you do your self-evaluation, you are unable to take your learning to the next level. So this is an important aspect, and we must give opportunities for peer evaluation, self-evaluation, and feedback. Another thing is goal setting. If you can have children do goal setting for themselves, so if they are doing a subject and they are doing a chapter, you can ask them to set goals for that chapter. Normally we don't end up sharing learning outcomes with the children at the beginning of the session. We just say this is the topic and this is what is going to happen and the subtopics. But really, when we have learning outcomes, that by the end of this lesson, you should be able to write so and so, explain so and so. When you're able to give that to children, they can therefore assess themselves, am I able to do this after I have done the lesson? That's an important aspect that needs to be there. Of course, learning involves conscious and unconscious processes. So every time we're learning, there's this content that we intentionally present to children, right? And we think this is what the children have learned. But there's another unconscious learning that takes place, and that comes in, from various aspects. And I'm now going to take you through actually everything that we did, whether it's your environment, whether it is the non-verbal and verbal cues the teacher is giving that you're taking back with you, whether your peers have said something, that's something, whether it's the meaning that you have formed within. All these are unconscious learning processes that may be taking place. And to ensure that this happens, so your brain is working in both places. The conscious process where you as a teacher are teaching your children, and that's the learning that they are taking in. The unconscious processes where they are taking in from the peripheral, the teacher's verbal, non-verbal cues, the peers, whatever is around them, and they are taking that all with them. So it's important for children to understand these unconscious and unconscious processes. We normally don't end up teaching children about thinking, thinking. And that's something we must teach them. So, it's important to include aspects of understanding metacognition and really how does my brain learn as a part of the curriculum when you're teaching children. When they can understand, okay, this is what helps me to learn better, they will be able to learn better. As adults now, and as educators, I think we to a great extent are able to understand. Like, I know that I need to make my notes if I have to learn. I am not just an auditory learner. I need the visual and auditory format if I am to learn better. And that helps me learn better. Just imagine if children were able to understand this at an earlier age, where they would understand these processes for themselves, they would be able to learn much better, and they would understand. Sometimes it's a sound. I can't take the sound that's around me, and then I can't learn at all. So my brain does not register, and that's something that maybe I might understand in the class. And I'd say, okay, when I go back home, I have to read the chapter because that's when I'm going to learn better, or I have to mark it with colored ink. When I see those yellow, pink colors in my textbook is when I learn better or I remember better. All these aspects need to be taught to children. So we have to provide opportunities, of course, for self-monitoring, self-reflection, and then, of course, experiential learning. Nothing like it for children. So we must have that. Yeah? So as you can see, children enjoying themselves and also learning. So thinking about thinking, utilizing, I spoke about all these aspects. So promote mindful engagement. I think that's a must, and teachers are facing that as a challenge currently within their classrooms. How do we bring in mindful engagement for children? But I'm just thinking about this. What if each one of you just had this space where you taught children about metacognition, where you taught them that this is your brain and this is how you learn, and you have these checklists that are available online. Give it to the children. Say, how do you learn better? What if the kids realize for themselves and therefore make these efforts? What if you make them self-evaluate, self-reflect, or get their peer to work with them? Creating a safe space, of course, because as we said, We need to create safe spaces for children to learn. When we do all these things and we create performance tasks, the children are able to learn better. Yeah. So for any class to happen well, you have clear and explicit expectations for high standards, high achievement for all learners to not only learn, but also to be in charge of their own learning. And that's the most important thing, to be in charge of their own learning. Give them the tools, explain it to them that you can be in charge of your own learning and you can take it to the next level. And when I say high standards and high achievement, I'm not only talking about the A plus plus or the grade, but the satisfaction it brings to the child that I have been able to move towards reaching towards my inherent potential. And that is something that all teachers and students and parents must understand, that it's about the child reaching their own inherent potential, not somebody else's expectation is what where the child needs to reach. I think that's something that's extremely important. Yeah. So coming back to closure, and I always like to summarize and bring you back to where we started from. So the brain-friendly classroom. If you're able to bring these aspects, that's for thinking, of thinking, with thinking, and about thinking, you'll be able to have a great class, a brain-friendly classroom where you'll have high achievement and foster high self-esteem. Yes. Thank you so much for this. And if anybody has any questions, so I just stop share.
So, Deepa ma'am, it was a highly power packed, enriching, very, very relevant presentation. So practical. So thank you for all the tips that you have shared. It would help the schools and the classrooms to be more thinking, more brain friendly classrooms and schools. As of now, we just have a question from Mr. Amit Sharma. He feels if the teachers share the learning outcomes at the beginning, would it not trigger a kind of a race amongst the students? If I have understood the question correctly, if Amit sir, if you feel something different, please unmute yourself and put your question.
Can I answer this?
Yes, please. Yes, please.
Okay. So, well, there are some children who will race, some who wouldn't. But we always like to know the direction rather than go into a blind room. I would always like to be told where I am going and the direction I'm going in. Then it's up to me what speed I want to take. I think more than the children, it's also about the parents and the grades that we give that needs to stop, which will actually stop and what we are looking at as a race, but not really sharing the learning outcomes. We can go ahead and share the learning outcomes. So that's something that we can still continue to do.
Very well said. In fact, the child, when knows what is the purpose of learning, what finally I'm going to implement, what I'm going to get out of this class or this lesson, they will be more keen to know when they see that it is actually applicable in real life.
Yes. Yes.
Purpose of learning becomes important here and should always be at the center of
Yes.
any kind of learning.
Yeah.
We do not have any other question as of now. The participants may feel free to either type or they may unmute. I would just like to bring to everybody's attention how this whole session has been so relevant in terms of the pedagogies that the new national education policy also has been talking about, whether it is about experiential learning, which includes reflection. Just experience does not teach you. It is after reflecting on it that you learn. So she has spoken about, ma'am has spoken about reflection, experiential learning. It's about different activities. It's about activities like mind maps, graphic organizers, storytelling as a pedagogy. Activity I've already spoken about, but project-based learning, problem solving.
True.
So, what it basically covers is also the vision and mission of education that every institute must have. And coming from an international school, a Cambridge school, I can so confidently say that it covers all the attributes of Cambridge learning for Cambridge learners and teachers, whether it is about confidence, it is about innovation, it is about being engaged, reflective, and responsible for your own learning. What I loved the most is there is a need for teachers, for all of us to make the students take responsibility for their own learning by being self learners. So, why don't we talk in our classes to students, making them conscious of how they learn? If a child knows how I learn, how my thinking helps me in learning, then they can take charge of their own learning. And this is what is needed, self learners. That's when they will become original thinkers. They would just not be copy pasting things from Google, from internet. So this is very important. And another point, very subtle but very prominently, which has come out for me is, in lesson planning, teachers start somewhere in the beginning with the objectives, learning objectives. But how many of us actually share it in the beginning of the lesson with our students? It's for them that the lesson has been planned. It's not for informing your superiors that these are the assessment objectives and learning objectives. It is for the students to know that this is what I'm going to achieve at the end of the lesson, and see then the curiosity, whether I'll be able to achieve, how will I be able to achieve that. So thank you. These were some of the key takeaways that I have personally taken. I'm sure my friends have taken a lot, just as I've done. Friends, feel free if you have a question, if you have a thought to share. So the parents from my school, teachers are thanking you. Deepa
Thank you.
ma'am, are you able to
Thank
access
you.
the chat now?
It's been a pleasure to be here, and thank you so much, Jaya, for this. For inviting me to this platform. And I sometimes say that even if you can take one thing back from today's
Right.
session, it'll be more than enough. And apply it. Just apply it in
Absolutely.
your, teaching,
Absolutely.
or as students. If students can apply it for themselves, I think that will just help. Thank you.
So
Thank you.
I firmly extend gratitude to you.
Thank you. That is so
Thank you.
sweet. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
Thanks to all the audience. And we look forward to continued guidance and support from our 39th Aadharshila, that is Ms. Deepa Bhushan, and also the support and active involvement, engagement of all our participants. See you next Monday with the 40th episode of Aadharshila Talks at Ramratna International School. This is Dr. Jaya Parekh, Principal of RRIS, signing off with a huge thank you
Thank
to
you.
the speaker and to everyone.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
so
See
much.
you.
Thank you. Thank you.
We have the next session on 11th of January. You would not like to miss it. We have the session by Mr. Nilesh Oak. Amit sir, are you presenting that creative? So those who are interested can just have a look at what the next session entails. It's an interesting topic